wanted to bring today's episode to the podcast talking all about yoni steaming or vaginal steaming, whether you have a heavy cycle and a regular cycle, if you have spotting or long cycles. This episode is for you. We're going to be talking about how yoni steaming can help you on the fertility journey, exactly how to do it, an easy at-home method. So I'm excited for you to listen to today's episode. Let's go. Hey, Luna, excited to have you back on the podcast.
Thanks, Sarah. So good to be here.
Awesome. If you just share your journey, because I have a lot of people that come to this fertility, supporting people on the fertility journey, have their own journey with, cycles and things that are going on with their health. So maybe just share with us what brought you to yoni steaming, which we're going to be talking about today, or vaginal steaming. How did you get here?
Yeah, I like sharing my journey because it ultimately is a positive one. And really what it was is in my 20s, I lost my cycle for a whole 7 years. And that's kind of the prime of a woman's fertility. So it was a really extreme moment. And I was not settling for any kind of band-aid. When I went to doctors, they wanted to put me on birth control. Eventually, later down the line, I got, told that I should go on hormone replacement therapy. But just instinctually, really deep inside of me, I wanted to just menstruate. I didn't want something to be creating my cycles for me. So I really went on this deep, deep healing journey of trying to figure out the root cause of my hormone and fertility imbalances. And that's what led me to healing my gut. It's what really clued me into some environmental toxins that were really stressing my system. And thank goodness I eventually just got my cycle back. And when I started cycling, I still had some hormone imbalances. I felt like at the time of just getting my cycle back, I still felt kind of like, I was really lacking that lust. I felt like I had a very low libido. I still felt like I still had some vaginal dryness, and got guided to yoni steaming. And really, the first time I got guided to yoni steaming, it was more in a circle of women. And this one woman was sharing the practice with us. And it was actually really, really, really beautiful. It was, we all kind of supported each other as we experienced this yoni steaming really, truly for the first time for most of us. And it was so nourishing and so deeply healing. And one of the first things I noticed right after that yoni steam was I noticed a good bit of cervical fluid. And it just really excited me because I knew I was kind of feeling like, my hormones were still in balance. And really what it was is my estrogen was still really low and I was still having really short cycles. So that's where I got really curious and I got myself a yoni seat and I started steaming more regularly. And that's where I got to see how this practice was so beautifully supporting not only my reconnection with an area of my body that I felt like almost got frozen, while I wasn't menstruating. I got to re-enliven that area and really got to also see my fertility come back and my hormones really become balanced again. And it wasn't just the yoni steaming. I was obviously doing the diet, the rest, the exercise, the stress reduction. But the yoni steaming was a huge catalyst for just supporting my reconnection and just really bringing circulation and energy back into my womb and ultimately supporting my body. And now currently I use it with my fertility clients, usually bring it in. And it just seems to be an added tool for them to also connect with their bodies and support ultimately their fertility goals moving forward. So
yeah, it is interesting with the, I know because I did a blog on this, I think back in 2015 about vaginal steaming or yoni steaming. And we'll talk about the difference vaginal versus yoni. But it was Gwyneth Paltrow, like back in the day on Goop, where she was like, I'm doing vaginal steaming. And like, everyone's like, you're crazy. What are you doing? This is nonsense. And then she was talking about that, talking about the the jade egg, all those sort of things, that these things have been around for, thousands of years. And all of a sudden, oh no, we can only do medication. That's the only sane thing. Meanwhile, herbs and, the jade egg has been around for like thousands of years, but no, you're nutty. So like our whole thing is, we're doing testing, looking at, the DNA of your microbiome, food sensitivity testing, genetic testing, all that piece. It's also, castor oil packs, looking at your mindset, working on the emotional trauma of things. We see people that haven't had cycles, in years, people in their 40s, cycles coming back. Obviously, each person is different. We don't want to make any kind of like false promises or anything, but we see this happen. And so as part of the toolkit, the vaginal steaming or the yoni steaming can be really, a lot of it is just that whole self-care and that nourishing piece for you, and time to like take to yourself, because you can't really do much while you shouldn't be sitting there on the phone. We'll talk about that, but it is, the ultimate in self-care for you. And then it actually can help with your fertility. Again, it's a standalone, no, but like Luna was saying, part of that toolkit. So let's talk about yoni versus vaginal. Like let's talk about that piece, and then we'll get into exactly what exactly is yoni steaming.
Yeah, so yoni is a Sanskrit word, and it just has a more beautiful context to it. It kind of means like the inner temple, the inner sanctuary. And vagina, truly, it means like a sheath for a sword. So it's just a different way of saying they're both the same. They're both saying the same area of the body, but there's just a greater feeling for me when I say the word yoni. So yoni steaming, V steaming, or vaginal steaming is truly all the same thing and the same practice. And really what it is it's just steaming that area of the body. It's hovering, squatting, or having a nice stool where you're sitting over a pot of steam. And it can truly just be the water. The herbs are actually just a great addition, but truly the practice of yoni steaming is actually just the work with the water, and can be just done with the water. And the greatest thing about yoni steaming is that it's been traced back to all lands and all cultures. And I think that's where, we don't exactly have all this study on yoni steaming, but for some reason, people across the globe have taken on this practice, and there's got to be a good reason for it. So that's where, I almost don't need all the studies for it, when the ancient practices across the world have chosen to in some form do this practice of yoni steaming and have found it beneficial for so many different things. This is what really piques my interest. And it's interesting that you mentioned the jade egg, because I was also doing the jade that time period too. And I think it just is when you're choosing a different route with healing. And for me, I knew there was something wrong with this part of my body. I did not menstruate for 7 whole years. So this is where I really wanted to bring in the toolkit of all the different things to really invoke the energy, the power within this womb space within myself. So yeah, just to say more about the yoni steaming piece is really you do not need anything fancy. You can just have a pot from your kitchen, and you can just go outside and get herbs from your location that you're living. But what is nice is you can also get a very nice seat, and get some specialized herbs for the intention that you're working with. And it's really sitting over these herbs for a short period of time, really. You really not recommended longer than 30 minutes. So anywhere between 10 to 30 minutes based on what your intentions are and what your constitution is. And it's just really important that whatever you're doing, you're using non-toxic ingredients, so that if you are sitting on a seat, that it's non-toxic, no plastics, and whatever herbs you're using are organic. And even want to consider your water, using distilled water or some kind of, spring water would be most ideal.
Okay, so let's walk us through it then. So, because I've heard you can do it and do it on like with the toilet too, or you can like put a bowl by the toilet. But yeah, like let's talk about. So how do you see you're gonna squat over this thing for half an hour? So let's talk about yeah the logistics of this and what that's gonna look like. So we get a stainless steel bowl then. Like what are we doing?
Yeah, I would recommend stainless steel or ceramic is really good. And really, it's choosing your herbs. Like I said, you can get a really nice blend, or you can also just wild harvest. And I can talk about some of my favorite herbs too. But you get your herbs, and sometimes it is really taking a moment with your intention. So if I'm ever giving someone a yoni steam or like facilitating a yoni steam, I have them sit with their herbs and kind of actually put their intentions and their thoughts of what they're wanting to manifest in their body into the herbs. And then in a pot, you do not need that much water. For my personal seat that I sell, the bigger the pot, the better. Like you try to get the pot that is the biggest that fits under the seat. And that way the steam will kind of rise up to the seat. And you need about a liter of water, and you'll start to simmer that on the stove and then pour the herbs in there, and usually simmer with the top on because you want to keep all the aromatic herbs inside the pot. Maybe say for 10 minutes on a very, very low simmer. And then you want to turn it off. And usually there is a time period for just letting it sit. That can be anywhere from, say, 5 to 10 minutes. And during that time, usually just set the space. And this is where you can light the candles, turn on some music, get out the journal, anything you feel like you want to focus on during your yoni steam time period. Sometimes it's just going into a state of meditation, and you'll set out your seat, whatever you're using. If you don't have a seat, like I said, you can do some yoga postures over a pot. Like this can be the first place where you just get curious, like just standing over a pot or doing some kind of like more sumo style squat over. Some people do like a child's pose over the pot. And then what you'll do is based on your constitution, if you're running cold, you will want to make sure that you have like tons of wraps. So I wear typically a bathrobe, and I'll have a couple towels to wrap around my legs. If you're on the edge of having hot flashes and you're a hotter constitution, this is where you can actually leave yourself a little more undraped as you're steaming so you don't induce too much heat in the body. But then like the big thing with yoni steaming, and I think the thing that makes people the most concerned is like, can I burn myself? Right. So this is where like we have intelligence within our body. Okay. So for one thing, just like cooking on the stove or before you put soup in your mouth, you kind of just know if it's a good temperature, right? So similar to yoni steaming is like you will put the pot underneath your seat and take the lid off, and at that point you're going to kind of start to feel with your hand and just be like, does that feel good, and then maybe you start to feel with the inner part of your forearm, and then if you get a good sense of like, oh, that steam feels good, it's really just a slow lowering down onto that steam. And if you get any sense in your body that it's too hot, you just stand up and you let it cool down longer. So it's really like it's hard to burn yourself when you're just deeply listening to your body and getting a sense of like, is this 100%? Just listen to your body. Your body knows you should sit upon the steam and feel a sense of like, oh, it should feel extremely relaxing. And if you feel anything other than that, it's too hot.
So
And then
essentially,
typically,
sorry, just
go ahead.
so basically, so you're simmering it for about 5 to 10 minutes, and then you're letting it sit for 5 to 10 minutes, and then at that point, you're gonna test it, and then yeah, your forearm in there, and then how I'm just trying to visualize being in child's pose with the pot. Like, how big is this? I don't know why I'm seeing a spaghetti pot, but like what kind of pot are we? Like, is it just like,
To be really honest, I've always had a stool, and I feel like, but this is, a lot of Yoni steam practitioners and stuff like that will always just be like, if you don't have the money to get a stool, you can just, and so this is also where, based on a person's body type and the pot available, you would actually just be trying to figure it out. Like some people, like obviously with a child's pose, it would be a smaller pot. With like a sumo squat, you could like maybe have a bigger pot going on. But I've always had a stool. And I would say if you're feeling called to this and you're going to do it often, you just want a stool because that's
Right.
the place where you can just sit and relax into it.
Yeah, I
So
couldn't imagine doing that sumo, like that goddess pose, like down really low there. It'd be like, oh, my thighs would be like burning. Like, forget about
exactly.
my
It's
yoni.
not as relaxing.
Right.
So
Okay. And sorry, I continue on.
So yeah, you'll just steam anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes. If you get a hit to like go less than 10 minutes, that's okay too. Really starting, I think, less in the beginning and just looking for a positive response. We want to be seeing a positive response in your menstrual cycle, in the length of your cycle, in your fertility. So this is where I am a fertility awareness educator. And if you are tracking your cycle alongside of bringing a practice like this and you just want to see improvements, and we can talk more about some of the other things that you hopefully will see improvements in, but that's what you're hoping for. But I say start slow and kind of increase, and also can be a great place, if you're feeling you want extra guidance, just to get a trained practitioner to support you in your practice. So
How many times a week would you say you do this?
it all depends on what you're going for, which I do want to get into. I would say I know we're talking about fertility here, and that's your zone of genius here at Fab Fertile. So for fertility, there's two different, things. There's the preparatory phase for conception, which is very much in Fab Fertile. When you're going through the protocols, you're highly advised not to be trying to conceive it during that time. So when you're in that preparatory, like you're preparing your body for conception, you can really steam often. Of course, if there's certain contraindications, you want to know about those, or any kind of deficiencies in the body. Like if someone is actually having a very, very short cycle, they want to be more mindful. That's kind of like a deficiency that you want to be a little more, you don't want to have be steaming every day for 30 days, every day for 30 minutes. But in general, with the preparatory phase, some people really steam more often because you don't have to. It's like kind of preparing the womb, the vaginal area for the baby. So it is like any part of the cycle is really open except for menstruation. So menstruation is actually one of the contraindications. Whenever you're having red flowing blood, you will not yoni steam no matter what. But if you're in the preparatory phase for fertility, you can really steam throughout that whole cycle when you're being guided. And if you have like a pretty regular length cycle, being like 28 days or longer. And then the most important time to actually steam is 3 days before your menstruation and 3 days after. So, if you weren't going for the big preparatory phase, where you're steaming throughout your cycle, then the other kind of place you want to focus is 3 days before menstruation and 3 days after menstruation. And the reason why is that's when the os, the cervical opening, is open and can really receive the herbs and the steam. So that can be the best time to focus next. And then when you start to move into actually trying to conceive, that's when you will actually only steam after menstruation until the point that you know you're in your fertile window and you're actually actively conceiving. So once there's insemination, you don't want to steam from there until you know if you're pregnant, basically. So that's important to stay is that is in the fertility journey, it's really good after menstruation until you're actually actively trying. And then once you have insemination, you don't want to try until you know if you're pregnant or not.
And what about those? So those short cycles, those irregular cycles, what are we doing there?
Yeah, I would say, just if you sense you're on a more deficient cycle, like the hormones are deficient, you're having hot flashes, I would just stick to more of that 10-minute Yoni steam. If you're having longer cycles, heavier periods, there's no sense of deficiency. You can really do like longer sits or just listen to your body, go up to 30 minutes. You can do it more throughout your whole cycle. So,
Okay, so irregular and shorter, we want to do 10 minutes. And then when we're in the prep phase, we can do that daily. But if we're actively trying, then the three before and then three after.
yeah,
And then,
actively trying, just once again, it's like anytime after your period until you are actively trying during your fertile window, that's when you would stop because the steam is not good for the semen. So once insemination is occurring, that's when you want to stop steaming. But anytime before that, some people actually even yoni steam like in the hours before, because it does kind of really help with cervical fluid. So it can be done prior to insemination, but once insemination occurs, no more steaming until you know if you're pregnant.
and what about pregnancy?
Yeah, so once you become pregnant, it's not advised until, and this is where you definitely want to be working with a practitioner, but it can be used in pregnancy prep. So there is a stage right before having your baby that a trained practitioner could guide you to be using it to prepare the body for having your baby. And then really, really beautiful is the process postpartum, where yoni steaming can really help. It can help, clear and release after the pregnancy, and then also support the tissues in repairing. It can help with prolapse. It can really help rehabilitate the body after pregnancy in such a beautiful way.
And anything else on the contraindications? Anything else we should look out for?
Oh yeah, there's like actually a good list. Like I said, the number one is menstruation. Anytime you're having red flowing blood, you just don't want to it will encourage more blood flow. And truly the energy is kind of down and out. You don't want to be encouraging energy up and in. Once again, during pregnancy, you don't want to yoni steam until the final phases and with a certified practitioner. You don't want to be trying yoni steaming after you're actively trying to conceive. If you have a spontaneous bleeding or a history of 2 periods per month, this is a place where if you're having like this, spontaneous bleeding, it could encourage more bleeding, and that wouldn't be wise. If you have had any kind of surgery in that area in the last 2 months, so any surgery in the area, endometrial ablation, tubular cauterization, and some hormonal birth control methods can be a contraindication. This is also where you just want to speak to a certified practitioner. And IUDs, there is some caution around IUDs where you would also want to speak to a practitioner and make sure that this is okay. And then if you're having acute infections, it's interesting. Yoni steaming can help like chronic infections, like more embedded infections. But if it's really hot and itchy, the steam could make it worse. So that's where it's not the greatest. And then there is just that caution around deficiency. If you're feeling like your cycle is really short and you're having hot flashes and you just know that your hormones are very deficient, this is where you just want to stick to the shorter steams and maybe not as often, and just wait until your cycle improves to really kind of extend the steaming time.
Yeah, so if it's a regular and short, just to clarify again, so 10 minutes, and what would be the frequency then you think you're seeing on that per week? Just more like,
I
hey,
would
did I
say
get
with the short cycles, I would just focus the 3 days before and the 3 days
okay,
after.
okay, okay.
Yeah, menstruation, that is.
And now let's get into the herbs. So what are some herbs that you like to add? And what are the ones
Yeah.
you recommend?
And once again, this can be just where you can tap into your intuition. Also, there are some really great blends out there. But things that like red raspberry are known to really support that uterine lining. Nettles is very nourishing. Ginger can be very stimulating and helping with circulation. I really, really love rose, almost for everything. It just helps with that heart and love centering. Mugwort, rosemary, lavender, and motherwort are some of the ones that are my favorite for fertility. So yeah, just finding a good balance of herbs. Once again, you don't need herbs. You can just use water. And yeah, just water is just great. But the herbs obviously add not only an aromatherapy, like as you're smelling them, but also get to penetrate and stimulate the uterine walls also.
And
I
not
just
and
wanted to, sorry.
yeah, and not to use essential oils.
Yes, not using essential oils,
Ooh,
herbs,
putting
or
in the
plenty
rose or the
strong up.
lavender. Yeah,
Yeah.
no. So it's got to be the herbs. So go ahead.
I was just going to say the one thing when you think of with infertility or fertility challenges is truly that the area is dealing with some stagnicity. And that's why Yoni steaming can be so supportive. So it's really the heat going into the tissues and improving circulation, releasing the stagnation in the area. This can help with so many things. Like just, to name some things is like this can improve like menstrual cramping. This is where like if you're seeing brown blood, anytime you're seeing brown blood around menstruation, that's a sign of stagnation. So once again, this will really help with that brown blood and releasing any of that stagnicity. Once again, irregular cycles, fibroids also are a sign of stagnation in that area. And so there's been reports of women being able to naturally release fibroids using like a more intense protocol. Like this is once again where you would probably want to see a certified practitioner and get a guidance on how many times based on your constitution. Yeah, very helpful for prolapse, increased libido, which I definitely experienced. Definitely can be really helpful for just prepping the body for conception, even the IVF and the IUI journeys too. So it can be used in preparation for that. And then it's just really beautiful practice for, slowing down and listening and coming back in tune with the womb space. It's like not too often in our society that we actually have these practices that ask us to slow down and tune into our inner self. And I think this Yoni steaming really, really supports that on a really deep level.
Yeah, we can use I guess back to the herbs. We can do the dried or fresh herbs. Also, I got a list here of like lavender, like you said, rose. I guess you're using rose petals in that, would you?
I
Uh,
love rose petals. Yes, exactly.
the chamomile, calendula. And then, yeah, and then let's sort of, and then I got some ones here for like if you're feeling a little bit, dry there, like slippery elm, marshmallow root, calendula, hibiscus. You can make hibiscus tea and drink that. And and then have that as your steaming. I don't know why I always find this a
Exactly.
little bit
I think
funny.
it's lovely to have a cup of tea while you're drinking and
Yeah.
also steaming your yoni. Yes.
And what about yeah, so like you're saying when you're doing it, you want to wrap up and then maybe put some socks on, keep your feet warm, and unless you're on the other side feeling like you're sweating and now everything's are hotter. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um and then yeah, like you did talk sort of briefly about some of the things you can do while you're there. And it's not about doing. We're like, ooh, let's get productive while we're doing our yoni steaming. That sort of is the thing we don't want to be doing. But how can we, yeah, like is it meditation or the journaling or lighting a candle? So we kind of talk about some of those sort of self-care things we can maybe do or not do during that time.
Yeah, it feels like such a deep sense of self-care when you do something like yoni steaming. So I think the more just time, more intention you put into it, the better. And it is quite lovely to do with a friend also in supporting each other in it. I've done that often, and just to be held in that space. You can be amazed how deep you can go and how you just didn't realize what you were holding in that area. It's really true. We hold so much deep in the womb space. So it's just I would just say like having tears release during a yoni steam could be a really common thing. And so just, having someone there to like rub your back or to get you water if you need it, or just for you to talk to or to dote on you as you're having this experience can be really good. So yeah, just setting the space, having a sacred space that feels cozy to you, that feels comfortable to you, lighting a candle, having your journal out. And sometimes it can be very simple. Sometimes it's just dropping into meditation and visualizing what you are hoping for your body and your fertility. I just really, really believe in creating these spaces of intention that you're really trying to invoke this healing within your womb space. So yeah, that is really, really important.
I feel like I'm harping on these herbs, but I'm gonna go back to them for a minute.
Okay.
To put on like the amount we need, so like a cup into like 3 cups of water. Is that kind of that's what I had from before? So is that what you're thinking too? Just from if someone's just gonna throw in a little bit of lavender and whoop-de-doo. As they say, you can do it with nothing, but is there like a best practice there if someone wants to like do some measuring and
Yeah, it's really this is a place where just your intuition could just reside.
Mhm.
Um you can do a couple tablespoons or you can do a little handful,
Yeah.
so it can be really a variety there based on what you have. Sometimes, during summer we have the rosemary growing and we have some roses outside. Once again, you do want organic, so just be no roses from the store. You want some good old organic roses from your backyard or your neighbors. But yeah, just I would say just fresh, organic, anywhere from 2 tablespoons to a handful is just plenty. Just a reminder to keep the top on, and then when you take the top off, feeling for that perfect temperature, and then sitting down at that point. Yeah. So
Great. And then, so you've got a guide here for people, how to Yoni steam guide. So it's going to go into a little more detail on exactly what to do there. Anything you want to share of what they can expect in the guide?
yeah, the guide will just be, a lot of what we've been talking about and a little more in depth, and also just sharing about my own Yoni steam seat. I like my seat that I've created. It's kind of middle road. Like there are some beautiful Yoni thrones out there. You can definitely, really get some really beautiful seats out there. I feel like mine is beautiful and it's, a little bit mid range as far as price. I also like it because we can take off the legs and store it, so you can store and travel it with it, which I've traveled with mine. So it's going to be a guide on how to use that exact seat also. But I will go into these different things, how to support your body, how to listen. I think what's most important here is just to know that Yoni steaming is quite simple. We can like really listen to our bodies and be attuned with, the best process to be using this practice. And if we sense we need any additional support, the neat thing about yoni steaming is it's an ancient practice, but it's really in the modern day today. And there are certified yoni steam practitioners that you can actually go to that have like studied this, and they, have a good way of knowing your exact constitution and really assessing what the best process is for you, because each body type is different. And if you're going for fibroid release or improved fertility, or, trying to improve your menstrual cramping, whatever it is for you, you probably will go about this a little different. So, you can really just listen to yourself, bring this practice in for very little money. And if you're sensing you need any additional support, it's wise to get that also.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway then is like the intuition, right? Sometimes you want to, I like to ask these questions so we can get the technical side of things of how to do it. But a lot of it is just listening to our intuition. And then this thing is the ultimate in slowing down. Like you are forced to plant your little butt, for at least 10 minutes or more. It's kind of funny with the travel piece because it's now like we're traveling with a blender. Maybe we got a Berkey. Now we got a Yoni stool. We just got the whole suitcase. Forget about our clothes, but it is, on the self care piece, and so it is. I just think this is one like a nice nourishing tool. So it's not something that you've got to that requires a lot of effort. It's like, to me, it feels very self care piece in a nice easy way. So any final thoughts for us here, Luna?
Yeah. Just, I would say, give it a try, and let your body tell you what it thinks. And yeah, if you're needing any extra support, reach out to some of the experts in the field. But I do feel like the neat thing about this, and what I've heard from other people who have brought this into their lives, is like sometimes you just had no idea that sitting over some steamed herbs was going to make such a difference. Sometimes, we've been told that the only option was a surgery or a drug or this or that, but actually sometimes it actually can be so simple. This practice has brought incredible relief to so many people. Like, that is why it's an ancient practice that is really flourishing in this modern day, is because it truly does work, and it has helped tons of people. So I would say, if you're not ready to invest in a seat and some special herbs, just really get a pot and, stand over it and just get a sense of what your body thinks on it. And if you get a yes, I would just give it a good try, give it a good go, and try it for a couple cycles. Really, for me as a fertility awareness educator, is when I see improvements in the cycle and how you're experiencing your menstruation and just how you're feeling throughout your journey here. If that is improving, then what the yoni steaming is helping. So that's what we really want to use as our gauge, to see if this is working for you. So
Amazing. I love it. Thank you, Luna.